Welcome to HardScript.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. The argument wasn't my idea, but there I was, cornered in our living room, lights harsh over my head, and her words weren't soft. No intimacy for a month, Anna yelled, voice shaking like she hadn't meant to say it. But it came out anyway, sharp, cutting, final. It sounded like a punishment. 11 years in, I'd never seen her that way. But there it was, someone I thought I knew standing in front of me, demanding distance. And maybe it was the rage or the shock, but something inside me simply went quiet. I ghosted. Not the dramatic vanishing act with new phones or a message that says, I need space. I just stopped responding, calls, texts, good morning memes. I became a minor character off-screen. She locked eyes on me like she expected a fight or tears. I didn't speak. I just left the room. That night, I lay in bed alone. The dark felt sharp, not cold, just unmoving. She knocked on the bedroom door at 2 a.m, crying, voice small. I changed my mind, she said, but my silence answered her. In the morning, the kids asked where Daddy was. She told them I was taking some time. That was the first lie. I made coffee and stared out the kitchen window like I was watching someone else's life unfold. I didn't plan the vanishing act, didn't even realize I was doing it until I'd done it. But I did. Days passed, quiet unfolded. She made dinner once. Didn't ask me if I wanted some. She asked me if it was my stress. Maybe work. Maybe she'd overreact. I nodded. I didn't tell her what I was doing. Not yet. But something had shifted. She wasn't me. And I wasn't sure I wanted to be part of the temperament she crashed my life with. I spent time outside. On the porch, in the car, at the supermarket. Just existing in public, invisible. And it felt oddly freeing. That was the moment I realized that ghosting isn't about punishment. It's about survival. Because sometimes, disappearing is the first step toward figuring out who you were before the yelling became your bedtime lullaby. I kept thinking back, trying to figure out when it started to go numb between us. It wasn't one moment. It was a slow drift, like a boat coming loose from its dock, inch by inch, until the rope was nothing but decoration. We used to touch in passing. I'd brush her shoulder when I walked by. She'd lean her head on my arm during movies. Small things. Thoughtless, but full of meaning. Then one day, I realized those touches had stopped. Not overnight, but gradually, until the air between us was all hands off. No fights. No discussions. Just absence. And that no intimacy line she screamed? That wasn't a weapon. Not really. It was a confession she didn't know how to phrase quietly. It had already been a month. Probably longer. She just finally said it out loud. I don't know if she expected me to beg, to fight, to prove my worth. But I didn't. Because somewhere along the way, I stopped needing her validation the way I used to. I used to track it like a habit. Her mood, her distance, her pauses. I'd adjust, change tones, soften my steps, all in the name of keeping the peace. That silence I gave her after she yelled, it wasn't revenge. It was me not performing anymore. I didn't want to win her back. I wanted to know who I was when I wasn't bending around someone else's emotional storms. The house got quieter after that night. Not just in sound, but in presence. She moved through it like a guest. The same woman who once laughed in every room now barely made a sound. She cleaned, worked, slept. I did the same. Except now, I didn't fill the space with effort. I let the silence stay where it belonged. The only time she said more than 2 words was 3 days later, when she knocked on my door and asked if I wanted to eat. I said I already had. She nodded and walked away. I wasn't trying to punish her. I just didn't have the energy to pretend anymore. I wasn't hungry for dinner. I was hungry for peace. I stayed in that quiet. Let myself feel the discomfort of not chasing approval. It was rough the first couple nights. Old habits tug hard. But the longer I stayed silent, the more I heard my own thoughts again. And they were calm. Not angry. Not bitter. Just done performing. That's when I realized. The distance wasn't about her punishment. It was about my clarity. And once you get used to not being needed, you stop craving someone who treats you like an option. The first sign that she noticed the shift was a coffee mug. It was sitting on the kitchen counter when I came down. My usual one. Black, chipped near the handle. Full, still warm. She hadn't made me coffee in weeks, maybe months. I didn't say anything. Just picked it up, drank it, and left the house without a word. That was the beginning. The start of her subtle reversal. A few days later, She asked if I wanted to watch something together. Said there was a new series she thought I'd like. I told her I was already in the middle of something. I wasn't. I just didn't want to pretend. It wasn't a game. It was preservation. Every move she made suddenly felt calculated, like she was testing the water with her toes to see if it was safe to jump back in. But I wasn't the same pool anymore. She had drained it, stood beside it, and watched the cracks form without flinching. Now she wanted to swim again. I let her try. She started texting me again, memes, little check-ins, questions she used to ignore. She even asked if I needed anything from the store. But she wasn't asking because she cared. She was asking to see if I'd still say yes. I didn't. Not out of spite. Just because I didn't want anything from her anymore. I wasn't angry. I wasn't cold. I was neutral. And that's what unsettled her the most. She wasn't used to this version of me. The one who didn't respond on cue. The one who didn't argue, didn't plead, didn't try to make her laugh after a tense dinner. She told me once, "You're acting different." I nodded. I was. She didn't follow up. Just walked away. The irony? I wasn't doing anything dramatic. I wasn't disappearing into bars or deleting her number or staying out all night. I was just done leaning forward. She used to hold all the emotional control in the relationship. She could make me feel rejected with a shrug or valued with a glance. And she knew it. But now, she was glancing. I wasn't looking. And the silence was louder than any of her moods. I wasn't chasing her warmth anymore. I was just noticing its absence and finally accepting it. Every quiet moment between us used to feel like a storm was coming. Now it felt like weather I could live with. Because once you stop reacting, the whole game falls apart. And that's what she was starting to realize. She hadn't broken me. She just watched me wake up. It happened on a Tuesday. She walked into the room, stood behind the couch, and said it straight. "I'm sorry." Just that. No fluff. No explanations. No excuses. And for a second, I felt something stir. Old muscle memory, maybe. The part of me that used to jump at scraps of affection. The part that used to beg for a moment like this. But it passed. She stayed standing there, waiting for a reaction. I turned off the TV. Not because I wanted to talk, but because I wanted to hear myself think. I asked, "Sorry for what?" She hesitated. Not because she didn't know, but because saying it out loud meant acknowledging what she did. What she allowed. What she ignored. "For pushing you away," she said. "For shutting down. For being cruel." She wasn't crying. She wasn't defensive. Just tired. Flat. I nodded. Not to forgive. Just to mark the moment. That was her trying. That was her effort. But here's the thing about distance. Once it stretches too far, some bridges never rebuild. I didn't hate her. I just didn't want to be on the same side of the river anymore. She came and sat next to me. Not too close. Just near enough to show she meant it. Said she missed me. Said she didn't know what she was thinking. Said she thought I'd always bounce back, like I always did. That part hit hard. Because it was true. I used to bounce. No matter what she threw at me, I'd find my way back to her. Tail tucked, voice soft, hands open. But not this time. This time, something in me had stayed down. Not broken. Just grounded. She asked if we could try again. If we could reset. Like all the things that broke us were a software glitch, not years of slow detachment. I didn't answer. Not out of coldness. I just genuinely didn't have a reply. Because I wasn't sure what, again, even meant anymore. Was she sorry because she missed me? Or because she missed the version of herself that didn't feel alone? Those aren't the same thing. She sat there a few minutes longer, then stood up. Said, "I'll give you space." And walked out. I didn't stop her. Didn't follow. Didn't collapse. I just sat there, staring at the blank screen in front of me, realizing how peaceful silence could feel when it wasn't tied to punishment. For the first time in years, her words didn't hook me. And her apology, as honest as it might have been, didn't feel like hope. It felt like closure. And I was okay with that. I started folding shirts. Not because I had a trip planned or a deadline approaching. I just needed to do something with my hands while the rest of me caught up to what I already knew. I was leaving. Not in a rage. Not in some grand statement with slammed doors and packed bags. I wasn't making a point. I was making a choice. I began small. Socks, undershirts, workout stuff. I folded them tight and stacked them in the guest room closet. No boxes yet. No big moves. Just quiet sorting. Every drawer I opened had traces of our life. Photos, receipts, half-used lotion bottles we both stopped noticing. It didn't make me sad. It made me clear. That house wasn't mine anymore. I had existed in it. but I hadn't lived in it for a long time. She still moved through it like everything could go back to normal. Like one apology could glue years of silence and rejection back into something whole. But it couldn't, and I wasn't angry at her for trying. I just didn't want to be the man who waited for things to fall apart again. I didn't want to live on edge, constantly checking the emotional weather. I wanted stillness. I started going on longer drives. Not aimless, just quiet. No radio, no calls. Just me and the road and a voice in my head that had been buried for years. That voice told me I was allowed to leave. Not for someone else. Not as revenge. But because staying in a place where love had to be earned by shrinking yourself wasn't love at all. One night, I didn't sleep in our bed. I didn't even tell her. I just took a pillow and laid on the couch. She noticed, but didn't ask. Maybe she thought it was just one night. Maybe she didn't want to know. But that couch felt more like mine than the bed ever had in the past year. She left early the next morning. Work, probably. Or maybe she needed to not see me there. I packed a small bag that day. Just essentials. I didn't leave it by the door. I put it in the trunk. That night, I slept on the couch again. The bag stayed in the car. She didn't ask. Neither did I. Because there was nothing to explain. I wasn't preparing to escape. I was preparing to heal. And sometimes, you have to leave quietly. Not because you don't care, but because you finally do. She found the bag on a Thursday. I hadn't hidden it well. Just tucked it behind the spare tire in the trunk. Not because I was careless, but because part of me wanted her to know. Not through a fight. Not through a letter on the counter. Just, no. She came home early that day. I heard the garage door open, her steps on the gravel. A few minutes later, the front door creaked open. She didn't say anything right away. Then she appeared in the hallway, holding the duffel bag in both hands. Not angry, not confused, just holding it, like it weighed nothing at all. I paused where I stood, waiting for whatever reaction would come next. But none did. She didn't ask where I was going. She didn't say, "Why didn't you tell me?" She didn't cry. She just set the bag down next to the couch and looked at me. Long, direct. Like someone watching the final few seconds of a show they already knew the ending to. And I saw it in her eyes. She already knew. She had known for weeks, maybe longer, that the man who used to chase her affection, who bent himself small to keep the peace, was gone. Not because he wanted to leave, but because he couldn't stay. She sat on the armrest. Said, "I figured." That's all. Not in a cold way. Not in defeat. Just as fact. Like we had both silently arrived at the same conclusion, miles apart, but right on time. I didn't explain. She didn't press. It felt strange, after years of circling arguments, tension that buzzed through dinner plates and bedtime routines, to sit in that kind of silence. But it wasn't awkward. It was clean. Free. She asked if I had a place to go. I said yes. An old friend's spare room. Nothing permanent. Just space. She nodded. We didn't talk about logistics, bills, furniture, who gets what. Not yet. That moment wasn't about the technical end. It was about the emotional one. And she didn't fight it. Because somewhere deep down, she knew she'd already lost me long before I put a single shirt in that bag. You don't lose someone in a day. You lose them in size. In dismissive glances. In nights spent turning away from each other. I watched her walk down the hallway and disappear into the bedroom. The same bedroom I used to tiptoe into, hoping to find warmth. Now it was just a room with four walls. And I didn't follow. I picked up the bag and set it by the door. Not for show. Just for clarity. She didn't come back out. And I didn't wait. I left just after sunrise. The house was still. Not asleep. Just empty in that strange way homes get when everyone's pretending everything is fine. I didn't write a note. I didn't close every cabinet or check every corner. I didn't do any of the things I thought I would do during a goodbye. I just picked up the bag, walked out, and pulled the door shut behind me. The click echoed louder than I expected. She didn't come out. She didn't stop me. And I didn't turn back. The drive to Josh's place was quiet. He lived 40 minutes out, in a little place tucked behind trees and silence. We hadn't been close in years, but when I texted him a few days before, he just replied, "Come by." No questions. No judgment. He wasn't home when I arrived, so I let myself in. Spare key under the mat, just like he said. The place smelled like wood and coffee. No photos on the walls. Just space. It felt like a blank page. I dropped the bag in the guest room, sat on the edge of the bed, and waited. Waited for the breakdown. For the guilt. For the anxiety to crash in. But nothing came. Just a long, slow breath. I didn't miss her. Not then. Not in that room. Not in that moment. That scared me a little. Because for so long, I believed that even if we broke, I'd carry her with me. That I'd be haunted by her laugh, or the smell of her shampoo, or the memory of her hand on my chest. But I wasn't. I was just present. Fully. Unapologetically. I laid back, arms behind my head, staring at the ceiling fan. And I realized, this was the first time in years I didn't feel like I was failing at something. I wasn't disappointing her. I wasn't walking on eggshells. I wasn't negotiating affection. I was just a man in a quiet room, allowed to take up space. Josh came home later with takeout and 2 beers. He didn't ask for details. Just handed me a plate, flipped on the TV, and we ate like we'd done this every night for years. I almost cried. Not because of the food. Not because of the escape. But because I didn't have to explain myself. He knew. Not the details. Not the timeline. Just the truth behind my silence. We didn't talk about what came next. I didn't know what came next. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid of it. Because that night, lying on a couch that wasn't mine, under a roof that didn't hold my history, I finally felt what I'd been chasing for years. Stillness. And I wasn't going to give it up. Not for her. Not for the past. Not even for the version of me that once thought staying made him strong. The message came 2 days later. Just a line on my screen. Can we talk? No punctuation. No warmth. Just plain text, like she didn't want to scare me off, but still needed to break the silence. I stared at it longer than I expected. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because, for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to reply. The old me would have jumped at it. Started typing, overthinking, trying to craft the perfect balance between honesty and softness. I would have told her where I was, how I was doing, maybe even slipped in a joke to ease the tension. But I wasn't that man anymore. She didn't reach out when I was breaking. She didn't reach out when I was quiet on the couch for weeks. She waited until I left. Until the silence became real. And now she wanted to talk. But I didn't. Not out of spite. Not out of anger. I just didn't want to open the door I had spent so long closing. That night, I didn't mention it to Josh. We watched a game, ordered pizza, and I laughed. Actually laughed. At something stupid he said. Not forced. Not performative. Just real. And in the middle of that moment, it hit me. I didn't miss her voice. I didn't miss her touch. I missed the idea of her. The version of her I created in my head to survive. That version was gentle, curious, patient. That version didn't weaponize affection. But that version never existed. She had her reasons, sure. I'm not innocent in all this. I stayed too long. I let resentment simmer. I lost pieces of myself trying to keep something together that neither of us truly fed. But still, I was done pretending. Done rewriting the history to make it easier to digest. The message sat unread. I didn't delete it. I didn't block her. I just let it be. Like a voicemail from a past life. A reminder of who I was and how far I'd come. There was no rush of power in ignoring it. No thrill. Just quiet. And that quiet was sacred. Later that night, I sat outside on the porch, listening to crickets and the occasional passing car. No drama. No tension. Just a man with his phone face down, breathing easy. That was the real shift. Not the leaving. Not the silence. But the moment I realized I didn't owe anyone access to me just because they finally noticed I was gone. A message came from someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Erica. She was one of her oldest friends. They met back in college, and even though they grew apart, she always stayed in her corner. When things got bad between us, I figured Erica would take her side. Most people did. Her message wasn't long. She's not okay. No judgment. No follow-up. Just that. And for a split second, my stomach turned. I almost replied. Almost said, neither was I. But I didn't. Instead, I put my phone down and sat with the feeling. The guilt crept in slow. Not for leaving, but for being okay after I did. There's something strange about seeing someone who hurt you begin to unravel. You want to be the bigger person. You want to check in, make sure they're all right. But you also remember how many nights you unraveled alone while they looked right through you. Still, I didn't delete Erica's message. I read it again the next morning. She's not okay. It wasn't a trap. It wasn't bait. It felt human. I didn't need details. I could imagine the silence. The meals alone. The growing realization that I wasn't coming back to beg, to negotiate, to try again. But that's the thing about damage. It's not always loud. Sometimes it just echoes. Erica messaged again a few days later. Said she wasn't reaching out to guilt me. Just thought I'd want to know. That maybe, somehow it would matter. It did, but not in the way she hoped. I didn't drive back. I didn't send flowers or an apology or a late night thinking of you. I sat with the discomfort. Because part of growth is learning you can care about someone's pain without carrying it for them. I don't think Erica was trying to pull me back in. I think she genuinely believed that love should mean showing up, even when it's hard. But we weren't in love anymore. We were two people who stayed too long in the same sinking room. And no amount of shared history could make me jump back in once I had air in my lungs. I sent Erica a simple response. Thanks for letting me know. Nothing more. I wasn't cold. I was just done. That night, I walked through Josh's neighborhood, no destination in mind. Just steps on pavement, breathing in the kind of air you don't get when your chest is constantly tight. I passed families on porches, kids on bikes, dogs barking behind fences. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a man who had run. I felt like a man who stayed, just in a different way. Stayed with himself. I saw her again 3 weeks later. It was the most ordinary place you could imagine, a grocery store parking lot. Early Saturday. Still cool out. I had just picked up coffee and was halfway to my truck when I looked up and saw her coming out of the sliding doors. She hadn't seen me yet. She was fumbling with her keys, bag hanging off one shoulder, a few groceries in hand. And then she looked up, right at me. For half a second, time stopped. Not in the cinematic way. Just a pause. Like the world waited to see what would happen next. She froze. Her expression changed 3 times in 2 seconds. Shock, sadness, and something I couldn't quite place. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel regret. I just felt still. She took a breath, like she might say something. But I didn't stop. I didn't walk faster. I just gave a slight nod, quiet, respectful, like I was passing an old neighbor or a teacher from high school. And then I walked right past her. Not out of coldness. Not because I wanted her to feel small. But because I had nothing left to say that would make either of us better. She didn't follow. Didn't call out. Didn't send a message after. That was the last time I saw her. I don't know what she felt in that moment. Maybe she thought I was heartless. Maybe she expected a conversation, a breakdown, a movie ending scene where we both cry and apologize. But real life rarely works like that. Some endings come quietly. No speeches. No closure. Just a man carrying a coffee past a woman who once knew everything about him. And both of them understanding that whatever they had, they'd already left it behind. Back in the kitchen where he stood too long washing dishes alone. Back in the bedroom where she turned away night after night. Back in the silence that said everything they were too tired to say out loud. I got in my truck, set the coffee in the holder, and sat there for a second before turning the key. The engine hummed. I didn't look in the rear view. I didn't check if she was watching. I just drove. Straight ahead. Not to a new chapter. Not to a new love. Just forward. For once, not dragging the past behind me like a shadow. Just a man with both hands on the wheel and no one left to convince. And the quiet? Still there. But now it felt like mine. What would you have done in my place? If the story hit you, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe. It only gets stronger from here.